Hello and welcome to Module 2 of Marketing Your PA Service. We're aware from engaging with those active in primary authority that the sharing of experiences and processes has provided practical help and support to users and providers of PA. We're also aware that many PA providers have little experience or knowledge of marketing, and this can, in some cases, limit opportunities to expand their PA presence. This work aims to go some way towards filling this knowledge gap, and we aim to do this by following an established marketing framework. This framework is called the 7 Ps approach, and we'll also be highlighting a range of practical approaches to the marketing of primary authority. But first, some quick references to marketing theory, which I'm hoping should help give us some context to this work. As far back as 1960, an author, Jerome McCarthy, first founded the concept of the 4 Ps of the marketing mix. And these were product, price, promotion, and place. More recently, in 1981, the 4 Ps were extended to the 7 Ps approach by Bernard Booms and Mary Bittner. This approach included the original 4 Ps and extended them to include a further 3 factors: physical evidence, people, and processes. All 7 of these controllable elements of a marketing mix can be clearly aligned with a service such as primary authority. If you're curious and want to gain more knowledge in this area, you could refer to this book called Principles of Service Marketing, now in its 7th edition. This is an older 4th edition. And it's written by Professor Adrian Palmer of Henley Business School. In Module 1, we looked at the elements of product and promotion. So in this Module 2, we're going to take a look at the elements of price and place from the 7 Ps approach of marketing a service such as primary authority. To look at price, we'll build on the findings of the PA Cost Recovery Report, which was commissioned by the PA regional chairs. And to explore the elements of both price and place, we'll be sharing practical perspectives of how these 2 controllable elements of a marketing mix are addressed by 2 primary authority providers. So, joining me today on this Module 2, this focus on price and place, is Michelle Manson, who is Business Team Manager in Buckinghamshire and Surrey Trading Standards team. Thank you for joining us today, Michelle. Michelle, my first question to you is, can you give us some background on this PA Cost Recovery Report I've mentioned, please? For instance, who produced it and why, and how many regulators responded to it?
Thanks, Neil. Yeah, happy to help. The chairs of the primary authority regional groups were discussing how we could help people delivering primary authority. Through identifying common questions, we thought the cost recovery survey could provide a benchmarking resource to support local regulators. The questions were also designed to give a flavour of the different approaches to help give people ideas for the way forward. The first survey was completed early in 2021 and we received 33 responses. But thinking about budget setting timetables and with a little bit of encouragement from the chairs, we repeated the exercise in August last year and we gained 71 unique responses.
Thanks, Michelle. From the report findings, how many primary authority partnerships do these PA providers have on average by the type of regulator or regulatory functions?
Yeah, we were pleased to receive responses from each type of regulator: trading standards, fire and environmental health. And in some cases, regulators work together in joint services or some other form of working together to deliver primary authority. Generally, of those who already had active primary authority partnerships, it ranged from 1 to 131 partnerships per regulator. And looking at the average number of partnerships, those services that worked together tended to support about 20. Fire safety had on average 16. Trading standards, roughly 14 partnerships, and environmental health on average 5 partnerships.
So we now know a little bit about the PA Cost Recovery Report,
why it was produced, how many regulators were involved, and the average number of partnerships. Our focus in this module too, as you know, is on price and place. And this focus could benefit from some understanding of the capacity for growth in primary authority across regulators. What does the report tell us, Michelle, about capacity for growth across the regulatory functions? And do you, Michelle, have anything to add anecdotally on this from your own experiences of talking with other regulators?
Well, Neil, from the survey, 46% of responders believed that they had capacity to take on more partnerships, with those working together in a group more likely to hold this view. The survey showed the least capacity in environmental health services who work alone. Personally, I found this interesting as I felt I was having more and more discussions with regulators who said that they believe they are at capacity, particularly for those delivering environmental health and fire safety. It seems that even some of the larger providers are a little more reticent to bid for new partnerships or maybe restricting their focus to local businesses. I can't be certain, but it may mean that significant future growth will need to come from those regulators new to providing primary authority.
Thanks for that, Michelle. For this focus on the price element of the marketing mix of a PA service, it would be helpful to know more about average hourly rates charged for a PA service. What can you share with us about these average rates, as well as the range of rates charged by regulatory function?
Well, the hourly rates did vary from £27.08 to £114 an hour, with the overall average of £67.77. Although there was no marked difference in the average by type of regulator, there was a small trend indicating that those services who work together tend to charge a slightly higher hourly rate.
That's quite a wide range in rates, isn't it? Michelle, focusing now on place in the context of where regulators are located, are these hourly rates charged dependent on geographic location? And if there are any patterns, why do you think certain geographic locations might have higher hourly rates?
Well, geographically, regulators in the southeast tended to have more partnerships. But Neil, it's possible that this data is skewed by a small number of larger providers. Regionally, the hourly rate is likely to be higher in the southeast and London, which perhaps reflects the higher cost of living when considering a cost recovery figure. Using the average charges reported, southwest reflected the lowest hourly rates. We didn't ask this question, but it may be that it's more desirable to keep charges lower if the focus is on supporting smaller local businesses and growing the local economy.
So that's interesting, Michelle, to learn a little bit more about how geographic location can affect rates charged. Staying with price for the moment, what does the report tell us about how regulators are structuring their pricing?
Well, the data revealed that whilst 31% of regulators charge an additional setup fee, 65% of them didn't. And 40% apply some form of minimum charge, for example, a minimum number of hours to be purchased in advance.
Thank you, Michelle. And finally, from the report data, what is the breakdown when it comes to methods of payment used across these PA partnerships? And how might the method of payments used affect future planning of a PA service?
25% of the responders were charging a single lump sum, and whilst 32% invoice in advance, 55% of the respondents were invoicing in arrears. As only very few partnerships require whole people to support them for the start, for me, the combination of paying in arrears and no minimum fee for the year raises some questions. So how does a regulator know what resources they need for the year? How do they project workload or income? And if they are growing or aiming to grow, how are they going to argue a business case to have resources in the first place or to expand or recruit new people?
Thanks, Michelle. Great to bring in some of the findings from the PA cost recovery report there, as well as some of your own perspectives. Thanks for your input, Michelle. And now we're going to get some input from Ellis Roberts. Ellis is Business Engagement Officer at the Shared Regulatory Services of Bridgend, Cardiff and Vale of Glamorgan. Ellis, is access to the cost recovery report benchmarking information helpful to you and your shared services? And if so, why? And also, what type of pricing option do you offer in your services?
No problem, Neil. Thank you for inviting me along today. Good to see you. In terms of the benchmarking report, it is particularly important to us at Shared Regulatory Services. Primary Authority has been around for a number of years now, but I think the idea of charging businesses for services, if you're working for a local authority, is still something relatively new, and perhaps some authorities feel uncomfortable with it. So having a benchmarking report where we can compare and contrast with what other local authorities are doing is particularly important. It also provides a backdrop for our own internal sort of finance discussions between us and senior management teams, and ultimately elected members when it comes to us deciding what our rate is going to be for primary authority charging. So having that template for working out that cost recovery charge is particularly important to us as a primary authority.
Thanks for that, Ellis. Ellis, can you tell me what type of pricing options does your service offer?
Our service provides a wide range of pricing options for businesses, and to be honest with you, we're quite often led by what the business wants. So we will invoice quarterly, half yearly, yearly, in arrears. It really depends on what the business wants. Quite often, if we're dealing with a small local business, they may want to pay a monthly standing order to us, so they can keep track of where they are in terms of their budget. If it's a large UK-wide business, then perhaps they're more comfortable with us invoicing every 3 to 6 months, which is standard. So we give that option and we listen to what the business says. But I think the key thing for us is being open and transparent from the outset.
Thank you, Ellis. And listening to what your business partners want and need sounds like a logical place to start in terms of your pricing structures. Staying with price, how and where do you communicate your cost recovery rates?
Our cost recovery rates obviously need to be decided upon by the service and therefore by elected members. So we communicate the rates to the people within our service. And once those prices and charges are agreed, we publish the prices on our website, on marketing materials that we produce. So we have primary authority flyers and leaflets that we produce for businesses interested in partnering up with us. So we're transparent with those costs, and as we approach the end of the financial year, if our costs, for example, are going to increase, then we will tell our partners a few weeks in advance that, say, for example, the prices are going up by £2 an hour from April the 1st, and we'll communicate that across to the business as quickly as we can, so they can plan ahead.
Thank you, Ellis. And I suppose that last question was a good example of how price and place elements intermix and overlap sometimes, because you were describing where you communicate your cost recovery rates. My final question on the element of price in the marketing mix of your PA service. How do you decide who will work with a particular business or on particular advice? And if a more senior person is required, would you charge a higher hourly rate?
And being a Welsh local authority, obviously we're unitary, so we have experienced trading standards and environmental health officers working within our teams. So when we're looking to work with a particular business on a particular piece of advice, we will look first of all at the capacity of the team. So what is a particular officer doing at that time? I mean, quite often our officers, as well as doing primary authority work, they have a prosecution caseload, they're carrying out inspections, they might be doing approval visits. So they have a broad range of work to do day to day. So we have to consider the capacity. I mean, the benefit of working that way is that our officers are able to see both the enforcement side and the advice side. So I think the advice that we can offer businesses is robust as a result of that. We'll also look at their experience of working with a similar business in a similar sector. So if an officer has worked with a hospitality business in the past, then we might find it's best for them to perhaps work with another hospitality business that wants our advice. We've had team leaders and operational managers sign off primary authority advice in the past, particularly if a piece of advice is quite niche and needs some advice on something like, say, tobacco regulations here in Wales. So we have senior people offering advice, but we don't charge any additional amounts for that piece of advice coming from a senior person within our service.
Thanks, Ellis. And now I'd like to move on to the element of place in the marketing mix of your PA service. This next question takes the element of place to mean where your partners are located. The question is, are most of your partners local to your service, or are they more widespread? And is this something that you planned and steered, or is it something that naturally evolved?
We currently have 31 primary authority partnerships. 13 of those are devolved, so they get Welsh-only advice from us, and 18 of those are non-devolved, so the majority are sort of local to our region in the Vale of Glamorgan, Cardiff and Bridgend. We love working with local businesses. Obviously, we want to help them to thrive and offer support whenever we possibly can. But we've also got a couple of sort of wider, nationwide, international businesses that have come to us to set up a partnership, and perhaps that's because individuals within that business liked what we did on a certain piece of advice for another business, or perhaps they like working with a certain individual. But it's great to see that businesses from outside of our area are happy to come and receive advice from us as well. So it is organic. We don't really go looking for certain partnerships. We consider each partnership request that comes to us, and we also quite like having a diverse range of partnerships to sort of challenge ourselves. So I think we've got quite a nice balance of those Welsh-only partnerships and local businesses that need our help and support.
Thank you, Ellis. And now looking at place in the context of specific business sectors. When you scan across your existing PA partnerships, are there any particularly important business sectors for you?
Each and every business sector is important to us. We don't go looking for particular partnerships. I mean, at the moment, we currently work with businesses in retail, hospitality, health services, manufacturing. There's a few trade associations in there, care homes, charities, distribution and storage businesses. So that tells you that we've got a broad range of businesses. And I think that's the way we like to do things. We like to challenge ourselves and like to take on a broad range of businesses.
Thank you, Ellis. So far, just to recap, we've looked at place in the context of your PA partner's location. We've looked at place in terms of whether or not there are specific business sectors. Staying with the element of place in these final two questions, Alice, and this time thinking about place in the context of where and how your engagement with partners takes place. For example, whether it's face-to-face or virtual. My questions are, firstly, do particular regulatory functions, for example, trading standards or environmental health, do they lend themselves to virtual engagement, or is there a significant need for face-to-face communication? And secondly, and finally, apart from regulatory function, do you think other factors like the size or complexity of the businesses you're partnering with can affect how you engage with them?
So I think going forward, there will be probably a blend of online meetings and meetings in person. I mean, just during the past few weeks, I've travelled to Birmingham and to Worcester for various primary authority appointments. So that suggests that there is an element of normality returning to sort of business engagement work. But undoubtedly, I think Teams and Zoom are here to stay. In terms of working with businesses of a certain size or complexity, I think the important thing for us is that we are willing to be as flexible as possible to meet the needs of the business. So particularly when we're working with large businesses that have PA partnerships in both Wales and England. So if that means having to meet halfway to do a visit for a piece of advice, or to have a quarterly or annual meeting, then we're more than happy to do that. We quite often meet at equidistant locations and get some work done on the train on the way down. So the more complex the partnership, the more flexible you have to be in terms of your availability and the speed of your response to queries. With some of our larger businesses, we're on the phone and on emails regularly, and with some other businesses, it's a case of ad hoc or here or there every couple of weeks. For example, during the COVID pandemic, I was on the phone with businesses anywhere from 7:30 in the morning to 10 o'clock at night. It was a particularly unique period, but that sort of demonstrates how you've got to change the way you work and think about business engagement when the time comes.
Thank you, Alice, for sharing that with us. And thank you both to Michelle Manson and to you, Alice Roberts, for being a very valuable part of this Module 2 of the series Marketing Your PA Service. Thank you.
No problem, Neil. And I hope people find the information in the report useful.
Diolch yn fawr, Neil. Thank you very much. Happy to help, and good to catch up with you as always.